You've started thinking about your next home and putting some feelers out, and you're like, hey, well, what if we build something? What if we go new construction? And then you quickly realized, oh my gosh, there's a ton that goes into new construction. Do we want to build and wait a long time? Do we want to work with a builder? Do we want to find land? Do we want to find an inventory home? Where do we even begin? What do we do? Well, guess what? You've come to the right place, because today we're going to crack open the books. We're going to do some homework and talk about where to begin, the difference between an inventory home and a build job home, pros and cons of both, and hopefully give you kind of some clarity on how to move forward. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go. When it comes to thinking about a brand new home, it is incredibly exciting. It's kind of like that new car smell. You get in and you're like, oh, ooh, we're the first people to live here. And it's so fun. It's kind of why I love helping families find new construction homes. But if you're not careful, it can be super overwhelming. So we're going to talk, again, pros and cons, because there's two different kind of avenues to think about with this. We're going to talk, you can either build from the ground up, or you can find a new home that has never been lived in that a builder has built. Either somebody had a contract on it and their contract fell through, or they built it as a what's called a spec or speculation home. And that's the builder saying, hey, we think we're going to fill in this community and we're speccing it out in hopes that we can sell it. So, and that would be a inventory home that you could move into quickly. So let's start on the inventory side. Let's talk a couple of pros, and then we'll do the cons of that, and then we'll go to a full build job afterwards. So the biggest pro in my book when it comes to an inventory home is the possibility that you could move in pretty quickly. For some, inventory means anything that has either been started and they don't have a contract on it, or it's completed or almost completed, and it's sitting ready to go. So there's kind of a big wide window there. A lot of times when you find inventory homes, a lot of builders will start advertising stuff that they have completed, ready to go. And if you find something like that you want, you could move into that home in as quick as 30 days. So keep that in mind. If you're thinking, oh, how quickly could we do this? If you find an inventory, move-in ready, got all your ducks in the row, got your financing or got your cash or however you want to do it, probably 30 days or less, depending on the situation. A lot of times too, back that up even a little bit further, you find homes that are almost done. It's like, oh, hey, we're at stage 7 out of 10, and we've just got to kind of finish out the inside. We can estimate that it's probably going to be 45 to 50, 60 days, rough estimate. And then you can get in on that contract and know, hey, in 45 or 60 days, we're going to be closing on this home. So that is a pro. If you're saying, hey, we're coming up on the end of a lease, we're not sure what we're going to do next. We already have plans to sell our home. We're moving from out of state. We need to get here quickly. A quick move-in inventory, new construction is going to be a huge pro to get you in, and it's done, and you can move on with your life and go forward from there. The next thing that I would count as a pro on a quick move-in home is there is more negotiation power for you as a buyer than on, let's say, a build job, especially on a home. Let's say a builder has a home that has been sitting, like it's completed. They've done everything they needed to do, and it is sitting on the market. Guys, the longer that home is sitting on the market, the more money it's costing them. They have holding costs because they've already paid for all the material, already paid for the labor, they're paying the taxes, they're paying the insurance, they're paying the electricity, all of those things. Like them not moving that home is costing that builder. And so when you start seeing homes that are completed and have been sitting 15, 20, 30 days, a couple months even, that's when builders really start to get antsy and they want to negotiate. I'm not saying they're going to give you $100,000, but there's room to move, especially if you're serious about it. So you can negotiate on those. Also, room to negotiate if, let's say, they had a contract fall through, like somebody's financing fell apart or they, canceled, and the home is already almost done. They were not expecting that home to come back to inventory. So there's room to negotiate there as well. And even homes that are almost completed, again, that are on their spec list, that you can negotiate a little bit there too, just because, again, they're trying to not have that home holding past the time that it is done and ready to go because it's costing them money. So what does that look like to negotiate? Biggest things I would tell you is it's more important, in my opinion, closing costs and interest rate buy downs than it is price reductions. Unless you're buying in cash, then you'd want to take the straight price reduction. But for me and my clients, what I always like to do is say, hey, where can we get to that makes sense from a closing cost perspective to help bring less money to the table, to help buy down those interest rates, because we're all watching these rates and they're getting crazy. So if we can help buy that down 0.5%, 0.75%, and use the builder's money to do that, that is far more beneficial than them giving you, let's call it a $10,000 just straight price reduction. So all of those things are negotiable. We can ask, and you're going to have more ability to do that on an inventory home than you are with something that you build from the ground up. Another pro that I think kind of comes out of that last one we were just talking about is you are locking in that interest rate. We've been watching interest rates kind of do this little number all for the past couple years, and nobody knows what's going to happen. And if they tell you they know, ask them to see their crystal ball and how their lottery picks are going, because they don't know. So the benefit of a quick close is something that's already done, again, brand new. You can go ahead and lock that interest rate in and say, hey, here's where we know we're pretty much going to be in terms of monthly financing. A lot of lenders right now too are offering as part of their promotional content, or as part of their incentives, hey, we'll lock you in, and if the rates change over the next year and a half, we will do either a discounted or a free refinance. And if you're like, hey, what's the refinance? Let's talk about it. We can see if we can make that make sense for you guys. Whereas on a long-term build job that's going to take several months, the ability to lock that loan is just not going to make sense. And even if you could lock it, you're going to spend a good chunk of money to buy that lock in place. Whereas something that can close in the next 30 to 60 days, greater chance you can lock it in and know where your monthly payment's going to end up. Part of that locking it in and getting into the house quickly is it allows you to say, hey, we're going to start building equity, and we're going to start letting our asset appreciate a lot faster. So especially if you find a home that's like in certain communities, because they build in phases, right? So if you find a home that is like the end of phase 1 and they say, oh, we've only got 10 inventory homes left in phase 1, and we're not going to have anything left to sell and for the next 6 to 7 months. Well, here's what I can guarantee you. That home that you buy today in 7 months is going to be $15,000 to $20,000, $30,000 or more expensive, because I guarantee those prices are going to go up as they jump through those phases. So you getting in on that phase, getting in to start making those payments, it's going to allow that asset to appreciate, which means you're starting to build an equitable gap quicker versus if you were to wait and try and get it on down the road and get into something later. We talked about the pros, and so overall, I think if you're looking at a new construction inventory, I think the biggest key that I always try and tell people, hey, is flexibility. If we can find something that checks majority of your boxes, that gets you everything you want and it fits your timeline, always want to go that route. Even though if we can't get everything, I think the flexibility there is key. So let's talk about the downsides of going quick move-in inventory or taking over a contract on a build job. Biggest downside that a lot of people are going to find is you're not going to get really any choices. If you find a home that's in those later stages or that it's complete, it is very unlikely that the builder is going to come back and say, oh yeah, we'll rip out that carpet and give you LVP, or yeah, you can change those cabinet colors. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. If you get into a contract early enough, you definitely have the potential with some builders to make those changes, like if they haven't ordered material yet. But if you get something later on, and definitely something that's completed, it's a highly unlikely that they're going to have to that they're going to give you the ability to make those changes. So you're going to be kind of limited, and you're going to say, oh, do we like this, or do we like that? And a lot of times, I find clients that are like, oh, we wish we could mix and match from a couple different houses. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense for us to do that. But what I will tell you, so as that's a con, what are those things that are cons that could potentially easily be fixed based on the amount of money you're going to save when you get into that home? So like, oh, the con is we don't like the carpet, but we love everything else about it. Okay, well, if you were to wait 6-8 months, like that house is going to be more expensive. Who knows what the interest rates are going to be? You could at that point have bought the house and replaced the carpet, and you would probably still come out ahead. So there's ways around those. Just know new inventory stuff, we're probably not going to get to make choices. Secondly, on an inventory thing, especially homes that are done and completed, there's always probably this nagging question in the back of your mind, like, what's wrong with this house? Like, why is it sitting? And then you find out, oh, it's somebody's contract fell through. Well, why? What did y'all do? And people just have this like fear, and you've kind of got to get over that, because there's a ton of different things that go into that. It could have been something as simple as, hey, we had a contract on this home and we got relocated to a different state, and now we're not actually, or our job kept us here and we were planning to come to Texas, and now we're not moving anymore, so we had to cancel our contract. It could be, hey, we couldn't get our house to sell. Or it could just be, hey, it was a spec home and, the market changed and shifted, and there's a ton of different things. I want to ease your mind, like just ask the questions. Hey, what's going on? Why is this home sitting? Well, we had delays, we had pricing, we had this and that. Yes, that is a con, but we've kind of got to get to a place where if we're going to move forward, I want to give you peace of mind in that, and don't dwell on, oh man, what could have been. So this one could be a pro or a con depending on how you see it. On an inventory home, a builder is not, again, inventory is move-in ready or about to move in. They're not going to want to delay. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier, of it's costing them money. Like, it's costing them money, it's a benefit to you, but it's costing them money, which means they're going to want to close quickly. There's not going to be like, hey, there's an inventory home, we love the house, can we get it under contract? Yeah, we want to wait like 90 days. They're not going to do it. They're going to want that house to close as quickly as possible. That's going to be one of those things, like if you have a contingency, and so like the contingency being, hey, we've got to sell our house. If your house, it just depends on the builder. We have to ask and say, hey, what is, what can we do? What can we not do? How far can we push it? There's some flexibility in that, but just know that they're going to want to close that home as quickly as they can get the loan underwritten and all the process and dotted and T's crossed and everything like that. So it's not going to be a long delay to get you into that home. Along those same lines, with a long delay, you could potentially be in a space where there's higher demand. So if you find a community and you're like, oh, these are the last 2 inventory homes, I'm not saying that you're going to get into a bidding war, because we don't know, but just know that like as a builder, they're going to do everything they're doing everything they can for their sales team to sell that house. So like if we come in and you're like, oh, I think I want to think about it, and then somebody else comes in, 3 hours later, like if we don't give them a definitive, hey, yeah, that's the house we want, there's a good chance that it's not going to be there forever. So there is a little bit of sense of urgency, not like, oh my gosh, you have to do this right now. But if you're going to buy something that's on their inventory or is coming onto their inventory that will close soon, you're going to have a little bit of urgency of like, okay, we like this house, we want to move before they sell it to somebody else. That covers the pros and cons side of the inventory home. Let's jump to the pros and cons of building from the ground up. And as we do that, I want to just tell you, hey, we're helping people every single week, both here in DFW and relocating into DFW, with their new construction builds and buys and questions and model home walkthroughs and all of these things. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I exist. That's why I do what I do, is to help you. So this is my plug to tell you, contact information will be kind of right there. I can't help you if you don't reach out. I want to be an advocate and get you into the best home possible. And I think we're pretty good at what we do. I'm just going to be straight up and be honest. I'm pretty good at what I do in the new construction space. So if you want the best deals and you want to be in a new home, I want to be your person to make that happen. So, but you got to reach out, because I don't know who's watching. So all that to be, let's put that aside, and we'll jump in the pro side of a build job. Pro being, you're going to get to pick everything you want. Depending on the builder, whether you decide, hey, it's a package builder, or it's anything, like you're going to pick the floor plan, you're going to pick the elevation, you're going to pick the lot, depending on, what's available in the community. So you're going to get all of these things as options to you. So that is going to be a pro. So you just say, hey, we're getting everything, and this is exactly what I want to do. So that definitely chalks up in the pro side. Another piece is you have a longer runway to get all of your financing in order. So what I mean by that is, most on average here in North Texas, we're still running between 7 to 9, even 10 months on build jobs, depending on the builder, depending on community. So you've got a longer avenue or a longer runway to help get your finances squared away. So you're still going to have to make that earnest money deposit on the front end, $3,000, $5,000, 2%, whatever the builder's asking for. You're going to make that deposit on the front end, but you're not going to have to come up with your closing costs and additional down payment until we're ready to close on that home. So you have time. You also have time if you're like, oh, my credit's not super great, or we're like in a mid tier and I want to bump up to the next tier. You have time to work on that. You have time to add more income. I will tell you, you have to get approved at contract time. but you have time to improve your status. Let me say that again. You have to be able to get approved for the loan at the time of contract. But if we are building from the ground up, you have time to improve your financial status and financial standing to potentially get you into a better place. On the flip side of that, you also have time to backslide your financial standing and credit, which means you've got to be sure you're staying on top of car payments, student loan payments, credit card payments, not doing major shifts in jobs or employment. You've got to, again, both and pro and con, you've got a long runway to get yourself prepared, but you also have a long runway to mess it up on the financing side. So something to keep in mind as well. Pro side, you get to watch the entire process happen. And it is such a cool thing to say, oh, we went from dirt to now there's dirt plus rebar, and now there's dirt plus rebar plus concrete, and then there's framing, and then there's drywall, and then there's electrical, there's HVAC, and oh my gosh, it actually looks like this is going to be a house. And so that is a super cool process to see, really something just be built from the ground up and get to watch it come together. On the con side, you get to watch the whole thing be built. And I will tell you, there's always going to be this human side of you that you're going to go on you're walking your site and you're like, what the crap? Seriously, just what the heck? What's going on? They didn't do anything this week, but the house next door, they got 50 things done, and you're going to get frustrated. Or you're going to go to your house and you're going to be like, man, this is kind of like trash everywhere. What's going on? Or something's inevitably going to be put up wrong. And you're going to be like, well, what about that? And the builder's like, yeah, I'm aware of that. We got to get it fixed. It's going to have to get changed later on. It's always if you got to see your car on the assembly line, so getting to see how the sausage gets made, it's good and bad, right? You get to take note of all the things that are happening and going on, but also you're like, oh, well, what about this? And what about that? And it kind of can potentially create a little bit of anxiety. So take those both with a grain of salt. The other pro, design center, they are a ton of fun. You get to, we're talking picking flooring, cabinets, countertops, tile, backsplash, lighting, toilets. That's a thing. All of these different things, and every builder does it differently, but it's such a fun experience to go in to these design centers and watch your home really just kind of come together. On a con, if you're not prepared, design center can get expensive. This is me educating you friend to friend. I'm going to tell you, on average, people spend an additional $30,000 to $50,000 in their design center appointments. So you need to be mindful of that's going to get added to your total of your house. For some people, that is overwhelming, and they're like, I don't even know, what do we do? How do we do that? And some people, it's it's a decision fatigue, and husbands and wives can't agree. And I've been in plenty of design appointments where we've been there for 2.5 hours, and it's they both want to pull their hair out and shoot each other. And I'm like, we need to have a counseling session. I need to put my pastor hat back on because this is getting uncomfortable. So good and bad. If you're a person that doesn't like to make a ton of those decisions, maybe we find you a builder where it's a package design, or you make sure you have your Pinterest board ready to go and we can show it to the designer and say, this is what we want to do. So there's the pro and con of that design piece as well. A couple of big cons, and we'll kind of wrap out our video with this, is in the long term of waiting, kind of like what we talked about earlier, you don't know what interest rates are going to do. And what I hate seeing is, and I've had this happen to clients, is, hey, they get under contract to build a home, and the interest rate when they go under contract was 5.75% or whatever it was. Well, then it takes 10 months, and then they actually get delayed. So it actually took 11 months to close their home, and they were actually at the top end of their threshold for financing, and now they can qualify. Their 5.75% has become 7%. And that added too much to their payment, and now they don't qualify for their home. And that whole home that they've watched be built, that they thought was going to be theirs, isn't theirs. So that could be a potential con because of how long it's going to take to build. You're going to have to kind of stick with your lender to make sure that you are on top of what's happening in the market, what's happening with the interest rates, and when can you lock that rate in? It's a big question. The other thing that would kind of go along the same lines, builders aren't doing it as much anymore, and it's always important to ask, but can the builder raise the price? Builder contracts are not written for your benefit. They're written for the builders. And if that's the case, we always want to make sure, can you, if material costs go up or labor costs go up, are we locked into our price, or can you raise it on us? Again, most builders at this point, 2023, we're not seeing that happen as much anymore, but we always want to make sure we know, hey, what happens in this 7 to 8 month time period. Also, your closing date, they're going to tell you, it's we're going to close it October 22nd. And you're like, well, it's May. Are we really? And it's going to be like, you're not. It's not like they're guessing. It's an educated guess, but you're going to have to be flexible. And you're going to have delays, and we're going to have weather delays inevitably, or we're going to have supply delays. We're going to have labor, like something's going to go wrong. And so you're just going to have flexibility. And so that can be hard, especially if you have another home to sell, or you're relocating from out of state. So there's so many moving pieces that go into that. That can be a con of well, what do we do? And we just have to figure it out. And it's kind of we play it by ear and see what we can do to make it happen. So we've talked about that. We've talked about frustrations. And then lastly, I think the biggest con, it kind of goes back to the decision thing in design. There's time to get into your own head. And you're like, well, why did we make the right decision? Well, what about this community? Well, and now I think I like this house better. And if you will worry yourself sick if you're not careful. And see, my job is to not let you do that. I don't want you to do that. So there's so much that goes into building. I have done, personally, we have bought both move-in ready new construction, and we've done the whole build job. And I can tell you there's good and bad on both sides. So ultimately, it just kind of comes down to what fits you and your family's time frame, what fits your goals, what fits your lifestyle. And the best way to do that is for us to have a conversation and get connected and talk about it. I'm happy to do all the legwork and the homework to find you the communities, so you don't have to spend hours online talking to salespeople. Let me do that for you. But as always, I can't do that if you don't reach out. Contact information is there. I hope this is helpful. My goal is to just kind of educate and provide information where I can, provide value. If you have questions about the new construction home buying process, comment down below. Love to respond and open up a dialogue with you. If you need to book time in my calendar, you can do that as well. If you just want to start the process and start browsing, there's some great new construction homes in the description below this video that you can look at to get you started. If you found value in this video, last thing, and I'm going to say goodbye, thumbs up and the likes go a long way. It helps me help people. If you're interested in learning about new construction, subscribe to the channel. We're putting out fresh new content every single week to help you build your homes of your dream. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. We'll see you in our next video. Bye for now.